Anyone that knows me knows that I'm a massive fan of Resident Evil. I've played almost every game in the series, apart from a few spin-offs. But the two biggest entries that I've never got around to playing are Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. To anyone that knows of Resident Evil, that's probably a big shock, as someone who claims they're a massive fan of the series wouldn't say that they've not played the two most popular games. Aside from Resident Evil 4 of course, but that's beside the point. So I was really happy to hear back in 2015 that Resident Evil 2 would be getting a remake, as I'd heard nothing but good things about the original. And seeing how the last remake turned out, and how it became one of my favourite games ever, I was really looking forward to this new one. Fast forward 4 years, and here we are. Resident Evil 2's story follows two characters, Claire Redfield, a college student who's looking for her brother Chris, who just so happens to be the same Chris Redfield from the original game, and Leon Kennedy, a rookie cop on his first day on the job. Today, Claire is probably most known for her games, Resident Evil Code Veronica and Revelations 2, and Leon is almost certainly known for his game, Resident Evil 4, a game which changed horror and action games forever back in 2005. Without spoiling much of the story, both characters end up in Raccoon City a day or so after an outbreak of a virus that turns almost everything it touches into zombies and mutated monsters. To escape this nightmare, they are forced to find a way out of the police station they have taken refuge in, and then find a way out of the city. Along the way, they meet some familiar faces who have shown up in later RE games, such as Ada Wong, who is also a prevalent character alongside Leon in Resident Evil 4, and Sherry, who made her reappearance in Resident Evil 6. The characters are great, including the voice acting, overall motion capture, and the way they've captured the performances in general is all insanely detailed. Every character, as far as I'm aware, uses a real person's face, and they've all been scanned in great and look incredibly realistic. The facial capture is a highlight, as it really helps characters convey emotions, something Resident Evil games have always suffered with before. Normally always been very melodramatic or overstated with their character performances, and therefore for this reimagining has been changed for the better, to a more modern horror atmosphere with a serious tone. The enhancements to these performances are things that would have never been possible 20 years ago in the original. This attention to detail, of course, carries over to the main game in overall graphics and presentation. I don't need to state the obvious and tell you how good this game looks. It uses the same engine as Resident Evil 7, aptly named the RE engine, and seeing its application in this game is just proving why, in my opinion, it's one of the best engines out there in gaming at the moment. Despite there being two main characters in this game, there is no co-op or multiplayer. This is a strictly single player experience. You begin the game picking one of these characters and playing as them throughout the story, but once you're finished, you can go back and play the second side of the story with the other character. This works both ways, Leon first, Claire second, and vice versa, and was previously known in the original as the A and B scenarios. This adds quite a bit of replayability, but isn't exactly how I expected it to be implemented. I'll be talking more about this system in depth later in the review. Finding a way out of the city is a lot harder than expected for our characters, as they are forced to endure a tension-filled romp throughout the Raccoon City Police Department, and a variety of interesting sub-locations, such as the sewers and some others that I won't mention here for spoilers' sake. Focusing on the police station as it is the main location you'll spend most of the game in, it is really well designed with tight corridors and maze-like qualities, but it's really well laid out with lots of key locations for you to remember your whereabouts on the go and so on. You'll find yourself backtracking throughout the station a lot, to unlock doors and areas that you couldn't get to previously, or to pick up items that you didn't have space to pick up before. You'll know where the items are that you found, as for once in a Resident Evil game, the in-game map is actually useful. I've always found in the previous games the map was extremely confusing and convoluted, but in this game things are laid out very simply, and there's even a system that tells you if you've cleared a room full of items, which I found to be extremely helpful. You'll be tasked with coming through these areas in the game, primarily the police station, solving puzzles and overcoming encounters. Puzzles have made a big comeback in this game, from their minuscule use in Resident Evil 7, and are definitely a highlight of the gameplay loop. Using a fallen officer's journal to discover the code to obtaining medallions for a statue, or having to find number or letter codes scrambled down on worktop surfaces for rewards inside of safes or lockers is really rewarding and really feels satisfying and fun to overcome. None of these puzzles are too difficult, and very rarely did I find myself stuck at all on any of the puzzles or anything of the sort, although some of the codes were quite hard to find. Gameplay in this game, to put it simply, is phenomenal. Gone are tank controls and fixed camera angles from the original game, and instead here we are treated to an over-the-shoulder third-person camera, as well as a more smooth gameplay style reminiscent of something more akin to the later entries in the series, such as Resident Evil 6 or Revelations. Despite the resemblance to gameplay of the aforementioned games, this game is a lot slower, and therefore adds a lot more tension, as you aren't able to slide and run about as quickly as you could, say, in Resident Evil 6. This doesn't feel restricting or like any sort of step back in gameplay whatsoever, and instead actually feels like an evolution and helps to amp up the horror. This slowdown element to the game creates great tension, and that feeling of having to scramble away after a close call with one of the many enemy types, such as the zombies, a dog, a licker, or the tyrant, really feel exhilarating. Even the general zombies in this game, just like the originals, can end a session of gameplay just like that if you make one wrong move. This never feels frustrating, and instead returns to that classic Resident Evil feeling of survival horror that has been lacking from the series for so long. A new gameplay inclusion to this game that wasn't in the original is the addition of defense items. These aren't new weapons, but add a twist to existing ones. When grappled by an enemy, if you have one of these items in your inventory, whether it be a combat knife or a grenade, you can press the left bumper on console to stick these items into the enemy so you have a chance to escape. This is extremely helpful for getting out of tricky situations, and adds another element of tactical thought into your inventory management, which is already a big aspect of the game. The shooting in this game feels perfect in general. It feels responsive and fluid and doesn't restrict movement as it had in some of the previous games, but it also doesn't allow you to move at the speed of light either, as seen again in Resident Evil 6 with its more action approach to shooting. If I had one thing of note to perhaps mention about the shooting in this game though, it's something that's not necessarily a negative, as it is more sort of comical. Shooting a zombie in this game sometimes feels more like throwing stones at a watermelon, rather than a bullet through flesh. It can sometimes take 6 to 10 headshots from a standard pistol to take down a zombie, and this can take some getting used to for the average player. Sometimes even after these 6 to 10 headshots, the zombie may even start to get back up once you get near it and shamble towards you. Some people may think this mechanic is a bit cheap, but I love it as it sort of emulates classic Resident Evil gunplay, where sometimes you'd get a head-popping headshot with one zombie, and the next could be shambling towards you for a whole clip of ammo. It also works really well towards making you feel as though you don't have enough ammo for the enemies you're encountering, and it's all a perfect balancing act behind the scenes from the developers for the gameplay loop, and it always makes you feel like you're under pressure. A very cool mechanic in this game, which is new, is that each bullet or knife slash will rip and tear through a zombie, leaving it disfigured and chipped away at, and sometimes bullets will tear off body parts if they've been hit too much. You can literally shoot every limb off of a zombie and it will slowly shimmy towards you. This cool implementation adds a lot of gore into this game, which has also been amped up for this entry. A while ago I mentioned the Tyrant, and I'd be remiss to not expand on it further in this review. If you're hesitant of seeing absolutely anything in this game in case of spoilers, I won't mention anything but what's been seen in the promotional material. He's an absolute standout in this game in every category. The moments you have escaping this hulking bioweapon are some of the best in the game. They're so tense and so scary, the mere thud of this guy's footsteps can make my hands instantly sweat. This guy won't go down like any of the other monsters in the game, and instead he'll pursue you mercilessly. Again, without spoiling anything, the way the Tyrant hunts you is persistent and unexpected, and leads to some of the best shit yourself moments in the game. It's no wonder that this aspect of the game is really contentious with players however, as the presence of a non-stop threat can be both a positive and a negative in some aspects. I, however, think this is one of the best parts of the game, and makes for some great reactions.
Jesus Christ!
Talking of the Tyrant's footsteps, sound design in this game is nothing short of perfection. From everything such as the weapon sounds, ambient noises, and the diversity of the different monster sounds, the team at Capcom have absolutely nailed this aspect of the game. My one gripe with the sound design is with the music, or the lack thereof. There is some music in the game, but it doesn't appear frequently enough, and when it does, it's very understated. Previously in the series, I felt the opposite way, where music is very prevalent all the time, and sometimes, although very rarely, can actually take away from the eeriness of a situation. However, it's the opposite in this game. Things like the save room theme not appearing enough in the game, on my recollection only appearing twice. This is where I think having the classic music pack in the game is a godsend, and although it's a bit stupid to have to pay for it, or have purchased the deluxe edition, it does add something that I think is missing without it. The music that is in the base game though, when it appears, is great. The final piece of music in the game is fantastic and very different to the rest of the music, but feels very at home in the Resident Evil universe. And the Tyrant's accompanying music adds for even more pressure around him. Even better is the intense music from the 4th Survivor bonus mode, an absolute standout on the soundtrack. Talking of the extra game modes, now would be a good time to cover all the extra bits in the game. I'll start by covering the previously mentioned A and B scenarios, or the second sides. This is a very hard to explain area of the game, so please bear with me while I try as hard as possible to get it all out. As mentioned before, the second side is unlocked for the opposite character to whom you played as the first time round once you've completed the game. I was excited to boot this up straight after completing my first go around with Leon, for now I'll regard to as Leon A, but it wasn't quite what I was expecting. On my first second side / B playthrough with Claire, I was expecting something that would fill in the gaps as such from my A side playthrough. Instead it sort of felt more like a quicker cut up A side version, but with the other character. Most of the puzzles and objectives are the same in these second sides, but things are different, such as doors being locked or unlocked that weren't previously, and puzzles being laid out slightly differently. The pacing of these B scenarios is a lot quicker as well, as I was finding myself with most of my weapons and a lot of items within the first 20 or so minutes, and already being chased by the Tyrant for example. This is obviously due to them expecting you to go straight into the second side of the story after you finish the first half, and wanting you to get back into the thick of it a lot more quickly. I still found that despite the changes on my first B-side playthrough with Claire, it was still easy to speed through, as I'd already done stuff in this playthrough just hours beforehand, just in a slightly different way, in Leon's A scenario. There were other things that just felt strange in the B-sides, particularly with the story. I can't get into specifics without spoilers, but there were many moments in Claire B for example which completely contradicted Leon A. The B-side story in general just feels a bit off and a tiny bit rushed. It's all quite strange and confusing and very hard to explain, and I don't think it's been implemented in the way that I thought it would be. I've heard that it was implemented better in the original game, with things affecting the other side of the story, even down to the items you picked up in A not appearing in B. That all sounds much better, and unfortunately leads me to believe that this version of the second scenarios is possibly the only thing in this game that is worse than the original. This is only so disappointing due to how good the A sides of the story were as well. I was just hoping to get the same level of near perfection and detail with the B sides, but was unfortunately let down. It was said before the game came out these A and B scenarios won't be in the game as they were in the original, as a way of surprising the fan base for their subsequent appearance in the remake. In a way I sort of look back at that trick and maybe wish it had been true. I've seen a lot of people saying the same as me, and thinking that maybe a more expanded version of these characters' stories, just being named Leon's story or Claire's story, that intertwined and told one big cohesive story without these confusing plot holes and so on from the B scenarios, would have been a much better choice from my point of view than what we have with these current second sides. Other bonus modes include the priorly mentioned The Fourth Survivor. This is a short time trial based mode in which you control Hunk, an iconic Resident Evil series mercenary, as he sprints his way from the sewers of Raccoon City to the police station front door. This game mode is extremely intense and beyond stressful, as you are making your way through every monster in the game with limited ammo and healing items, and as I said before, the music in this mode is awesome, but can also get your heart pumping. The final bonus mode is the Tofu Survivor mode. This mode is literally just the Fourth Survivor, but instead you play as a big block of tofu, and instead of having any weapons, he's just equipped with a couple of knives and some herbs. That's all there is to be said about that game mode, to be honest, as it's more or less the exact same as the Fourth Survivor, but it's a fun little add-on from the original that I'm glad they included in this remake. Resident Evil 2 2019 is by far one of the best remakes of any game I've ever played. It's unlike Resident Evil Remake 2002 in the sense that it doesn't take a one-to-one recreation approach for things like gameplay or updating the fixed camera perspective. However, it does take the same care that Remake did in updating said things instead for a true modern day gaming experience. This means swapping the fixed camera angles for the third person over the shoulder camera and dropping the tank controls for a smoother control set. The game is a return to form for a series that had been lost for some time and started to course correct with Resident Evil 7, and I'm more than happy to say that if this game is indicative of the future of the franchise, then we're in for a good time. General gameplay and everything that makes up this game is fantastic, and despite the second side scenarios under-delivering a little bit and could have maybe been implemented a little bit better, as someone who never had the chance to play the original game the first time round, overall I couldn't recommend this game highly enough. If you're a fan of survival horror, puzzles and exploration, or all of said things, give this one your time. Thanks for watching my first ever video and first ever review. If you enjoyed it, consider liking the video and sharing with your friends. If you'd like to read the extended written review, just go to the link in the description. Resident Evil 2 is getting some free DLC I think sometime in February, February the 15th, called The Ghost Survivors, so I might be doing a review on that, so stay tuned for that as well. Thanks again for watching.